Hi guys, welcome to Copywriting for Social Media. So I understand this is a lunchtime lit session, so I'll try and keep it brief. Don't want to take up too much of your time, and probably a lot of you are like eating lunch at your desk watching this, so I'll try to give you a bit of time to go outside. Throughout the chat, please ask any questions using hashtag DWF or @emergingwriters. I'll just put those on the screen now for you. Cool. So that's where you can ask any questions. Alrighty. So I first just wanted to start talking a little bit about myself. It's not a chance for me to just toot my own horn. It's just that I kind of wanted to give a bit of context as to where I get all my knowledge from and why I guess I'm qualified to talk about this. My full-time job is as social media manager at TBWA. It's an advertising agency in Melbourne. There I manage social content, which is mostly writing copy for social, but I also oversee social production. So that includes directing videos and animation and collating images and things like that for social content. I've done work for education, automotive, FMCG, tourism and corporate brands for social. So I've kind of got a wide variety of experience writing for a bunch of different clients and companies. But I also have a background in long form writing. So I've been a freelance writer for about 6 years now. And I also kind of worked as a journalist for a little while. I've been published in a bunch of publications. So basically online publications like Junkie, AWOL, Time Out, and literary journals. So like Lifted Brow, Kelly Darlings, and Overland. And so I've kind of come from long form writing, but I'm now doing social writing. So it's quite different, and yeah, we'll talk about that throughout the session. So in this talk, I want to just give you some general advice for writing for social media. I think it can apply to both personal and brand pages. So whether that's you trying to leverage yourself as a writer or promoting your own page, or if you're trying to, kind of get into advertising and copywriting as a freelancer, or if you just want to start your own brand, hopefully it'll be useful for a bunch of applications. So we'll talk about those things. So I kind of wanted to split it up into a few different topics. So firstly, we'll talk about how social differs to other forms of writing. And then I'll talk about common mistakes that we've seen sort of in the social field, made by people who don't really have that much experience with social. And I'll talk about how we can kind of address those mistakes, or what I would do in those cases. And then I'll talk about why good writing is really important for social. So obviously, good writing is useful anywhere, but on social it's really, really important, and I'll talk about the reasons why. And to finish up, I'll summarize and give you some tips. Hopefully it's stuff that you can start using straight away, which will include tips for writing for social, but also tips for writing generally and tips for social generally. So we'll kind of be able to talk about different ways that you can use social media if you're completely new to it. And of course, just ways to kind of better your writing in the digital world. Cool. Let's start by why writing for social is different. People have shorter attention spans online. If you think of your own behavior when you're scrolling through your news feed, you don't really kind of look at everything deeply or really, really engage with everything you see. It's very quick. You're kind of glancing at it, maybe you'll read a little bit of it, and maybe if it catches your eye, you'll kind of pay a little more attention to it or click on it, depending on what it is. So we, as people that work in social, have less than a second, basically, to grab someone's attention. So it's really, really important to do this straight away, first up, with something catchy in your writing. I guess for the journalists among us, this probably reminds you a little bit of the inverted pyramid. Yeah, when the most important information goes first, and then the other stuff is sort of just to add extra information. That's true in this case, where like basically people will only see the most important stuff first, and they might not even go to the bottom of whatever it is that you've got. The second reason writing for social is different is social media is inherently visual. So I'm sure if you think of your own social media feeds, you're more likely to look at something that's got like a video or a funny picture or something like that that grabs your attention rather than just sitting there reading the text. On personal pages, Facebook's brought in this colored background feature where you have your text with like a colored background. It's basically trying to bring focus back to the words, but it's doing so with a visual element. So you can see that like the only way to get attention on social is to do something visually kind of eye-catching. So writing sort of starts to become an accompaniment to these visuals, but it definitely has its own place, which I'll talk about later. So lastly, social media is different because it gives you immediate feedback. So in the Twitter sphere, if people don't like something, they will let you know. They don't hold back. They don't ever kind of consider that, you know, you're a human, and they always think that they're the only ones that have that opinion. So that can be kind of scary, but it's better to be able to see this as direct feedback you can use to make your work better. So that's kind of one of the most important things about social being different to other forms of writing. You can engage with these people if you want to like remedy problems, or you can just have fun with your audience. If you use your writing to kind of help address complaints or even just prove them wrong, like that's kind of the best way to go about addressing issues with people who kind of give you feedback, especially negative feedback. And that's something that we'll talk about throughout the talk as well. So now I'd like to go through some common mistakes that I've seen in my experience. So the first mistake is tagging yourself. I've seen a lot of brands, particularly with people who don't really have much experience with social, who will tag themselves on Twitter and things like that, which is, it looks a bit funny because if you kind of want to tag, you're usually doing it for engagement and to kind of link yourself to maybe another brand or another person, not really just to sort of show that you have a page. It's pretty obvious that you have one because the content is actually coming from you. So it doesn't really make sense to be tagging yourself on publications. So another mistake is writing too much or relying too much on text. You've probably seen on newsfeed, Facebook will actually truncate your text when you've got too much of it, and it'll have this little see more link. So it doesn't really like long kind of pieces of text on it, and it's fine in the sense that like maybe people will click on see more and they'll want to read more of it, but long form writing, it just isn't really consumed on social, and that's why it does that. So we kind of think that people shouldn't be writing really, really long pieces of information on a social platform. I know I get headaches from reading for a long time on screens, and I skim read articles online when I'm on my phone and even on desktop. And so writing too much in the social space isn't a good thing to do. Another mistake that I've seen a lot of is using too many hashtags or using irrelevant hashtags. So use them sparingly. Think about what you'd want to see and what you think is relevant. You don't really want to see a post that has hundreds and hundreds of hashtags on it because it's just not really engaging and it's kind of jarring to the eye. Instead, I'd recommend using hashtags that are actually relevant to your brand rather than kind of spinning them out just for the sake of it. And especially don't use hashtags just because they're trending. So you might see a lot of people kind of hashtag Taylor Swift or something like that because it happens to be trending on Twitter, it doesn't really work because what they're saying isn't always relevant to whatever it is. So trends are great in the sense that like they get a lot of attention, but you shouldn't just be jumping on them for the sake of it, particularly in the case of using trending hashtags. Cool. And finally, one of the biggest mistakes that we see is people deleting negative comments. So when you own a business page on social, it's really easy to think that any negativity on it is bad and you need to get rid of it. You know, Facebook's supposed to be this harmonious place and supposed to be this really positive space for your brand, but it's sort of, it can't be that way because you're pretty much always going to get negative feedback no matter what. And in the case of social, people really, really won't stand for you deleting their comments. So firstly, people expect their comments to be deleted. So they'll sometimes screenshot them, and then once you take it down, they'll repost it and they'll say that you deleted it. And that, it looks even worse than just having a negative comment up there. But secondly, it can actually act as helpful feedback. If the same comments keep coming up, it's probably useful for you in future to use them and to be able to kind of take them on board and better yourself or better your brand, because it's likely that if these people are saying it on social, there's probably a bunch of other people thinking it that just aren't voicing it. So I'd recommend, instead of deleting things, writing a response to that person that addresses their complaint or whatever it is in a personalized way. So in particular, using their name and addressing every part of what they've said. Obviously, if they're being offensive or obscene, or even if they're trying to promote their own business on your page, you absolutely reserve the right to delete their comments and even block them if you need to. But these are extreme cases. And for the most part, you really should be trying to engage with your audience, even if they are being a little bit negative. Cool. So I'd just like to talk a little bit about the importance of good writing on social. It's the first and most important thing I have to say about writing for social is keep it simple and short. I can't stress this enough. The best social copy is short and it grabs your attention straight away. So again, if you think of your own behavior on social, you're more likely to engage with something that's short and snappy. For example, if you're on the tram to work, or if you're, you know, waiting in line for your coffee or something like that, than you are with something long form. If you do have more to say, you can say it on another platform. So if you link through to an article or you've got a video that kind of has more story to it, you can absolutely put that on Facebook, and you just write something catchy in your copy to push people to watch it or click on it or whatever. I know it kind of sounds like clickbait, but if your objective is to get people to go to your website or watch your video, then social copy, and catchy social copy at that, is your best bet. So a couple of tips on how to do that. You've probably already heard all the classics. So, you know, cut back on adverbs and adjectives, remove that. But there's a few different ways you can do it. And I've got some video examples to share with you. I think I can't actually share my audio, so it should be helpful, and then it'll give the true no sound mobile experience. Cool. So putting the most important stuff up front can take the form of something that offers the key message straight away. So I'll just pop that on the screen. Cool. So you could kind of see from that video that the key message was the first thing that you saw. So win was the first thing on screen, which already tells you all you need to know, that you're going to win something. Obviously, there's the visual of the motorsport car to kind of give you the hint of what it was about, but you kind of got straight away that it was a competition. Cool. So the second video I've got is more something that's intriguing, that pulls people in. I'm not going to play the entire video as it's a bit of a longer content piece. Sorry, just bear with me. Cool. So that was a little content piece that we did for a new soft drink brand, Alt. You can see like the first line kind of talks about Instagram being linked to feelings of inadequacy, but it's a video that's on Instagram. So immediately you kind of get this sense of like, what am I going to see here? And that draws you in and keeps you watching. So another tip I've got in terms of writing for social is just be human. I know it sounds kind of a bit silly, but it is true. And as a brand, you kind of remember you need to sound personable. So that's a lot easier when you write from a personal page, but it can be quite hard when, you know, we're kind of used to things like brand guidelines or like lawyer speak, where like brands need to sound a certain way. But we all know that the consumer's smart. Like they can see through any BS that you put up there. So you need to kind of be able to talk to people as a person, because that's essentially what your brand becomes once it goes on social. So this is particularly key for customer service on social media. So customers, as I said before, they like to complain on social because it's public, but you need to be able to respond to them in a way that doesn't sound like a robot, because it is public. Cool. Another tip I've got is adapting your writing for social. So this is true for anyone who wants to work in an agency or who wants to freelance as a copywriter. You kind of need to be able to change your writing style to fit any brand and any voice. But you also obviously need to be able to add your own kind of flair to it. It's switching from different clients. Like I said before, you know, I kind of work in like automotive, FMCG, and I'm kind of going back and forth between a bunch of different clients and switching voices all the time. So adapting your writing to suit like a variety of different brands is absolutely essential. And it also gives the brand just a really strong and consistent personality. So that's like the most important thing in terms of being able to write for different brands. Cool. If you have videos, as you saw before, videos need captions. So in this case, you can use your writing to kind of make them work for you. Most people watch videos without sound. So as you probably saw, you couldn't really hear much of the sound on either of those. And that's why we kind of had the captions on the videos. And it's important that we have them so that the writing kind of stands out. But the cool thing about it is that on social, it's not teletext. You're not watching a movie with subtitles on it. You can be a bit creative with the captions and use them in ways that speaks to your audience. So you've got kind of things that come up on the screen that are kind of popping up that might, you know, engage and be sort of integrated with the visuals. So another tip I've got is looking at your favorite social accounts. So have a look at some brands that you think really stand out on social, and have a think about why you like them and what they do that kind of stands out from other similar brands. So from their competitors or even from your own kind of social pages. It's just a really good thing to do just in terms of trying to figure out whether, trying to figure out your own kind of social strategy and how you might want to run your creative. Obviously, you won't want to outright copy what they do, but you can adapt everything that you admire about what they do for your own work. Cool. I just wanted to summarize and give you some of the main tips that you can take out for copywriting for social. So I'll just pop those on the screen for you. Cool. So as I said, just keep it short and simple. Only say what you need to, especially in the social copy. Secondly, use the right hashtags and use them sparingly. And then adapt your writing. So be able to kind of change and reshape your writing for different brands and for different voices. And lastly, have fun with it. Social is so new and it's so different that people are always experimenting with what you can do with social, and you're kind of constantly testing and retesting and trying to figure out what works best for your brand and your voice. So that's one area where social kind of really stands out. Cool. So I thought I might spend a bit of time just talking about some other tips if you're interested in getting involved in social media just from a business perspective. So firstly, remember that most people are viewing on mobile. So that means that they're scrolling quickly, they've got no time to read something in depth. They have really short attention spans, and it's a background activity. So it's really low involvement, and it's something that, you're kind of doing while you're waiting for something, or you're on public transport, or you're just in line for coffee or something like that. Yeah. So throughout this chat, I've talked a lot about videos, and that's because videos get more engagement than any other form of content. You can do kind of content scripted videos, as you saw, for example, with the alt video, but you can also do sort of moving poster videos where you take like a still image and add some movement to it. So I'll just show you a quick example of one of those that we've done. Cool. So you can see that video is super simple. It's super quick. It's not really a video in the traditional sense. It's just a still image that has sort of one part that's moving in it. But it's also got kind of copy that kind of talks to it. So get a little closer while the truck is moving closer. But it's the small kind of eye-catching things that really sing out on social. So those type of moving poster videos work really, really well. And so it doesn't really take big budgets to make those either. And when you're creating visuals, so either images or videos or animations or whatever, you should consider a couple of different things. So firstly, aspect ratio on social is different to it is on other media. So while like TV and kind of more traditional visual media want things like in landscape, social and mobile is better suited to vertical, because people often just be looking at it while they're on public transport or whatever, and they kind of don't want to have to be fiddling with it and turning it to watch your video. So my suggestion is to either make things in 1:1 or 9:16, so that's vertical aspect ratio, and they fit really well on smartphones. And that means that you get to take more of what we call real estate in the news feed. So you don't have to compete as much with either of above or below content. So you get close to undivided attention, but also people don't get annoyed if they can't read something in your little kind of 16:9 video. Another tip is that for brands, organic or unpaid reach is actually really difficult to achieve. So if you don't pay to kind of push your content out there, something like only 2% of your Facebook fans will actually see it. This is called boosting in the Facebook world. But when you do boost, like, you have the option to target a bunch of different audiences. So that's why it's better as well. You can kind of get your content exactly to the people that you want to see it. So a couple of notes on strategies for paid media generally, because I know that this is kind of confusing for people who are new to social, is If you want to start paying to promote or boost your content, then you can start out small on Facebook and Instagram, because the minimum is only $1 per day. However, on Twitter and LinkedIn, it's actually much, much higher. So we're talking like tens of thousands as a minimum, which might not be worth it for, if you're just trying to boost your personal page, but it could be worth it for kind of bigger businesses. So once you start boosting content and you want to target kind of specific audiences, you can do this by demographic, interest, location, or you can kind of do it for like anyone who looks like your fans. So it will kind of find people that are similar to people who already like your page, or anyone who's visited certain websites. Okay, so we've got a question on Twitter from Taylor. Social media is increasingly crowded and dictated by paid ads. What's the best approach to make sure your copy gets seen? So yeah, as I was kind of saying, unfortunately, you do actually have to pay to get your stuff seen nowadays, just because the newsfeed is so crowded, and it is actually kind of done auction style within the Facebook algorithm. It wants to push your stuff out there, but it's whoever kind of pays the most gets the most seen. Unfortunately, yeah, that is the case. If you're talking about, say, Twitter, where like a lot of people don't pay for it because it is extremely expensive, and it's mostly brands that will do stuff like that anyway. What I'd recommend is actually using, talking about things that are really, really relevant to what you do, and using the right hashtags in that case, because on Twitter, hashtags are really, really useful for grouping things together, and people often do search within hashtags for content. So that's a really, really great way to kind of get your stuff out there. One of Twitter's best features is the retweet. So once you start getting retweeted by other people, if they like your content, obviously they retweet, then it starts getting seen by more and more people, and that's kind of a good way to push it out there as well. Unfortunately, obviously, asking for retweet sounds a little bit desperate, so it isn't always the best thing to do. But if your content is good enough, people will sort of just do it naturally. But yeah, thanks for the question, Taylor. So with social, as we mentioned before, experimentation is absolutely key. So I mentioned that, you should be experimenting with your content and, trying different, just sort of playing around with like different words and different ways of expressing things. But you can also, once you start paying for things, experiment with your audiences. So yeah, you can try and see if something works better for people who are of a certain age group, or who like a certain interest and that sort of thing. However, I recommend keeping variables to a minimum. So if you try keeping everything really consistent, but just changing one thing, whether that's your copy or your visual or your audience, that's the best way to kind of see which performs best, because you know the reason that something is better than something else. So in talking about performance, that can vary for different people. So I guess what I mean by performance is whatever it is that you want to achieve. So if you're more interested in getting people to click through to your website, then you would kind of be gearing more towards getting those clicks. And if you get more clicks, then that's a success to you. But someone who just wants to generate conversation through like comments on Facebook would kind of be monitoring those and trying to see how many comments they get, and if they get more on something that's got like a funny picture, or more on something that's got like a dramatic picture, then that's the kind of thing that they'd be looking at. So whatever it is, monitor it closely and use that data. Social is great because it offers you this immediate feedback, and the tools on Facebook and Instagram are essentially free to get that feedback and kind of learn how your stuff is working, how many people are seeing it, how many people are interacting with it. And you can tell right away what is and isn't working for your audience. In advertising, it's actually really, really hard to get this data in other platforms. So it's great that we have it on social, and you can kind of have it straight away and learn, within a day whether or not your content is working. So that's about it for me. If you want more information or you just want to chat about social and learn more about it, feel free to email me or tag me on Twitter. I'll just pop those details on the screen for you. Cool. So yeah, I'm michellesuko@gmail.com or @SaintMisha on Twitter. Yeah, thanks for listening, guys. I hope you enjoy the rest of the festival.